What's up guys, JayzTwoCents here, and if you follow me on Twitter, you know I've got my hands on something that's really elite and really hard to get. No, get your mind out of the gutter guys, we're talking about the R9 290 OC Gaming Edition graphics card. Jeez, what the heck kind of viewers do I have? Now, if you've been following hardware for any length of time, you've known over the last couple of months that cryptocurrency mining has really created a shortage of graphics cards when it comes to AMD. I mean, AMD's graphics cards, particularly the R9 and the 7800 and 7900 series graphics cards, have just shot through the roof in popularity because of how well they do at that cryptocurrency mining. So that has made this card very difficult to get. Just to hold this card right now kind of feels like an honor. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the specs because the R9 290, it's not an X, it's a 290, which I kind of feel is a better bang for the buck, honestly, and I'll kind of get into that in the conclusions. Spec-wise is pretty much identical to the reference model with the exception of a couple of things. Obviously, we've got upgraded cooling on here. Quite a bit of upgraded cooling. Second, MSI has implemented their military class componentry into the PCB with better ferrets and chokes, better capacitors, just all around beefier componentry, and the weight of the card is certainly evidence of that. They've also included on the back, which I feel every graphics card should have, simply because this is what you spend all your time looking at, a aluminum backplate. It's beautiful brushed aluminum finish. It's got the MSI name branded right on there, and it looks amazing. Now, when it comes to the cooler on this thing, the actual heatsink itself runs the entire length of the card, as well as being taller than the height of the card, which means if you're going to be putting this in a small form factor case, maybe micro ATX or even a mini ITX, you need to be mindful of the additional height. AMD's Mantle API did drop, which means if you're running a program or a game that utilizes the Mantle API, you can get a boost in performance because of the reduced strain on your CPU, which is really good for your graphics card. It's a little less evident in higher end cards like this, a lot more evident in lower end cards like the 270 sitting behind me. But otherwise it is going to be using DirectX 11.2. And you know, the performance on this is amazing. We'll get into that at the end of the video. There are some physical things I want to talk about here on the card. It does have a dual BIOS switch right here. And there is one thing I need to point out when it comes to the physicality or the physical properties of this card that I kind of feel MSI overlooked, and I want to make you aware of it. If you take a look at the 6-pin and 8-pin power connector, the heatsink rises up basically over top of the clips where you detach those power plugs. So unfortunately, you can't get your finger down in there to release the power clips, or the clips that hold the power plugs into their socket. So I have to get a small flathead screwdriver and kind of push up and pull out, and they pop right out. I just want to make you aware of that I think that might have been a little bit of an oversight on MSI's part, where you can't actually get your fingers in there to release the thing. And then it's not even a matter of having fat fingers like I do. I don't think anybody's fingers would fit in there. But that's really the only thing I can point out on this card that is physically maybe a downside. Now, just like all the other GCN architecture graphics cards from AMD, there is no Crossfire bridge because it's all handled through the PCI Express. Now let's go ahead and talk about what it is I know you guys want to discuss. Temperatures. We'll get to the performance and frames per second numbers soon. Let's talk temperatures, because let's face it, the 95-degree temperature threshold that AMD said was perfectly normal for the reference model is just way too damn high. Sorry, AMD. I know you know best, but we are the ones that have to deal with the temperature, and heat kills componentry. 95 degrees temperature, no bueno. So, the Twin Frozer cooler on here runs default at 18% at idle, and it never got higher than 30% when it comes to the fan speed, even at its hottest temperatures. Now, without touching the overclock, this thing runs at 1007 megahertz out of the box. That's up from the 941, which is basically the standard boost clock on this thing when it comes to AMD's R9 290. So you are getting an overclock on this thing out of the box, hence the OC on the box. Now at the 1007 megahertz mark and the 5 gigahertz memory clock, this thing was sitting right about 77 degrees Celsius in my open air test bench with the 30% fan speed. Now, I wanted to see exactly where we could push this thing. So I overclocked this and spent a lot of time. In fact, I spent hours trying to find the stable overclock on this for mine, which happens to be 1085 megahertz and about 5500 megahertz on the memory, bumping up the core voltage a little bit as well as the power threshold. And I also ramped up the fan speed to about 60%, which is pretty much matching what the case fan profile was when it comes to audio. So it wasn't really any louder than the case already was, which kept it from being intrusive. And I found that the temperatures ran right about 75 degrees Celsius while overclocked. So depending on how noise sensitive you are, you can lower the temperature of this by ramping the fan speed up higher. Onward to the things it is you want to know about, and that is how are the temperatures and how are the frames per second. Just stop blah 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 blabbing and tell us exactly how it performed. Well guys, when it comes to Battlefield 4, I was seeing an average of 93 frames per second. Temperatures never exceeded about 79 to 80 degrees Celsius depending on ambient temperature, with the stock fan profile of 18% ramping up to 30. If you're willing to push the fans a little bit faster to about 60%, which I still found to be extremely quiet and nowhere near the audio range of what the reference blower style card is, you can get those temperatures all the way down to about 75 degrees Celsius while pushing the overclock even farther. Speaking of overclock, I happened to get this card to about 1085 megahertz, which is a bit lower than some other people have gotten on their cards. But man, when it comes to the power that this thing puts out, 1085 is no slouch. And at 1080p gaming, it is just massive overkill. Now, when it comes to frames per second, there was certainly no surprise there. It just shattered any game I threw at it. And when it comes to the benchmarks, it benched right where I thought it would. And everything about this card was actually really pleasant to benchmark and mess around with. In fact, when it comes to it being air-cooled, it really performed a lot better than I thought it would, considering how hot these cards are from the factory. I mean, MSI and all the other brands out there certainly have their work cut out for them keeping this card cool. Now, with that said, you're going to want to keep various things in mind depending on the size of your case. Smaller cases are obviously going to create a hotter ambient temperature for this, which is going to create a situation where you're going to definitely have to keep the cooling and ventilation of your case in mind when it comes to this card. Now guys, tell me what you think about this card. It's certainly an interesting market at the time that this video was created, considering what cryptocurrency mining is currently doing to the price of these cards versus what their Team Green opponents are doing on the other side of the fence for the same price ratio and sometimes even cheaper. So what do you guys think? What would you pick, the R9 290 or GTX 780, which is in many cases much cheaper than this card? Guys, it's been JayzTwoCents. Make sure you leave a comment. Tell me what you guys think. If you like this video, it helped you out in any way, make sure you share it with somebody you feel it would help. Follow me on Twitter for more teasers like this videos you guys knew was coming if you follow on Twitter. And as always, I will see you guys in my next video.